Hey guys, it's me, Christian from Casually Christian, for a whole new episode of Casually Christian. If you guys are checking us out for the first time, here at Casually Christian, we talk about people's life, their interests, and their passions. If you like what you hear, please remember to hit like and subscribe and smash that notification bell to catch our latest episodes of Casually Christian. Before we get started, I want to thank Peter from Nostalgic Comic Shop in San Gabriel for letting us host our show this evening in his awesome store. For all your vintage comic books, graphic novels, and collectibles, Nostalgic Comic Shop is the place to go. They're located right across the street from the San Gabriel Library. Also, want to give a shout out to Emmanuel Alvarado and Monique Alvarado for setting up Javier today at the comic shop. You know, they're good hustlers, and I really appreciate them going out of their way and setting this interview up on location. Um, also, I with that intro, I'm pretty sure you know what we're going to talk about. Today, we're going to talk to a local comic book artist, a real pioneer in the independent comic book industry. Not only was his comic book El Muerto adapted into a movie back in the mid 2000s, but he's also one of the founders of the Latino Comic Con, which is happening May 30th and May 1st at the Museum of Latin America Art in beautiful Long Beach, California. Without further ado, folks, here is Javier Hernandez. Thank you for joining Casually Christian. It's much appreciated.
Hey, it's good to be here, especially here in this shop of my favorite comic shop. I've known
That's
Pete
right.
for years, so it's great to be beautiful backdrop. Comics, what more do you
Yeah,
want?
it looks beautiful, man. And actually, one of my questions is like, how did you meet Peter? Like, I met him last Saturday. He's a really cool guy, easy to talk to, very personable. And I just want to know, how did your relationship develop with him?
Yeah, so I met him, well, it must be, it's well over 10 years, I think. He was working at another local comic shop. And I think that's where I met him, just, going to that shop. Then eventually I found out he opened his own comic shop, Nostalgic. And
Yeah.
he had that place for about 10 years. And then they moved to this new location here
Mhm.
that you mentioned back in November. So it's a bigger place, more beautiful than ever. And they're always gung ho with supporting indie comic creators.
Right on,
So
man.
glad to
That's
be
really
here.
cool. It's really cool that you like being an artist, like you meet other people that support you and like you just develop a friendship, not just supporting one another, but like you just hang out with each other and you just like chill. And that's really cool. And with the COVID ending, what is it like? Going back into the comic cons. Is it back to normal? Is there like guidelines, strict guidelines, where like you have to wear a mask, like the tables have to be 6 feet apart, or is it just kind of like it was just like a pause and everything's just back to normal? What is it like now?
Yeah, for me, I did a few events last year, actually a couple here with Pete, like Free Comic Book Day,
Hmm.
and then that was done outside the shop, so that was still during the height of the pandemic, I guess. But so we were outside, we had masks and such, and then I did another show I think in December at Border X Brewery in City of Bell. So that was like my first indoor convention, I think,
Yeah,
for a couple of years. And again, it was masked at that point. Most of the customers were masked, so it's just been easing back into it.
I got you.
And then yeah, slowly but surely. I'm also a teacher,
Hmm.
so we had to teach on Zoom for 2 years, and then I finally
Wow.
went back into the classes this spring.
Was
So
it?
yeah, it's just kind of like you said, everything's slowly moving back to the way it used to be for the most
Yeah,
part.
and it's kind of weird. Like I don't know if you heard that there's like a new variant going on. I'm like, oh my god, it's like just stop, But like going back into like the classrooms to teach, is that like was that like hard to adjust? Was that like a hard adjustment to just finally go in person and teach your the peers?
The only thing that was tricky, or at least you want to be aware of, was just like wearing a mask, and hopefully all the students are vaccinated and you're vaccinated and nobody's got the COVID or anything. But as far as
Yeah,
like getting back and teaching in front of like students, like it felt great, like jumping into the ocean again. Like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be as far as teaching.
I
At least
got you.
that's how most of us prefer it. So,
Yeah.
um, and then just interacting with them. And because I teach comics and drawing, I can actually see them while they're drawing. I can help them or comment on them. Whereas before, students would put the paper up to the camera,
Yeah.
and you really can't see. I mean, you guys got really good cameras, obviously,
Yeah.
but the Zoom cameras in the schools and my phone, like
It's gonna be
I could
choppy.
hardly see what they drew. So yeah, I
Yeah.
felt pretty bad. Like, oh, that's great. I was like, I think it's great, but
Yeah, it's like, well, I think you drew it right, but yeah, like,
yeah,
I understand, man. Like, it's just, it's really cool to see everything kind of like getting back to normal, quote unquote. And
yeah.
what's your favorite part now that you're finally doing the conventions again? What was your favorite part of after 2 years going back and
You
on
know,
location?
honestly, it's literally sitting at your table, and then people come up to the table and you just talk with them. Whether I'm
And
selling the books, I'm there to sell books, but I'm not just making a hard sell every time. I usually ask people at a convention, when they come by the table, I go, "Oh, how'd you hear about the show?" So I'm
mm,
always curious, like social network, word of mouth, a flyer.
yeah,
So that's what I usually ask, or I ask if they're from here,
yeah,
from wherever the show's at. Are you from the area? Oh no, we traveled, we came. So just to start conversation, and then of course, oh, by the way, these are my books, and this is what I do, and da da
yeah,
da. But the interaction with the fans and the customers is
yeah. It's
that's the key
priceless.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, earlier when I started the show, I said that you were one of the founders of the Latino Comic Con. Like, how did you develop that con with your buddy? I think it was Ricardo Padilla, I believe.
Yes, Ricardo Padilla.
Yeah, can you
Yes,
tell us
thanks.
how did that begin? What was like the seed to that, and where is it at right now? If you don't mind us telling that.
Oh no, absolutely. So it started. The first show we did was 2011, good 11 years ago.
Hmm.
And I had known Ricardo some years before because again, I was doing conventions up, especially up in San Francisco area a lot. He would just come looking for comics. He was I think Silver Surfer is his favorite superhero. But he's very like very much into Mexican culture and he's into like literature and art and everything, and of course comics. So he was interested in trying to find is any
Yeah,
Latino comics, any Mexican American Latino creators. So he'd come across my work and some other friends of mine, and so he would start bringing his kids to the shows. Small kids. Hi, Andy and Sophie. Now they're all grown up adults. But yeah, they're little kids, and he would like encourage them. Hey, mijo, mija, look at this comic El Muerto, or this comic Burrito, or Sonambulo, or whatever. So he was really happy to see Latino comics made by Latino creators.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, and then one day I was up in San Francisco for probably some show or something, and we're just walking around the streets of San Francisco. For those who remember the old Michael Douglas TV show, um, and he was lamenting like the lack of like
representation.
yeah in just in the city like for a Mexican museum
Mm,
of just art in general. And I felt like, well, I can't do anything about that. I go, why don't we? I don't know. And I literally was just making it up in my head. I go, why don't we put together a Latino comics expo? I mean, I made up the title
yeah,
right there and then
you're like
because by then,
spitballing.
yeah, that's sometimes the best ideas are
Hmm.
they're not planned. And I had been doing this was back in 2010, and I'd been doing comics since '98.
Yeah,
So I had like a Rolodex in my head of a lot of artists. So I told him, he goes, well, what would that be? I go, well, I guess it'd be a comic convention focusing on Latino comic creators like myself and some of the friends we already knew, Rodi Montijo, Rafael Navarro, Carlos Saldana. Um, so he goes, okay, so what do we do? I go, I don't know. I go, why don't you contact, just for the hell of it, let's reach high, right?
mhm,
Contact the Cartoon Art Museum here in San Francisco. They're the nation's, I think, the first major or one of the first, at least on the West Coast, major museums dedicated only to spotlighting comics, comic strips, things
yeah.
like that. I go, why don't you ask them out of the blue? And they'll probably say no because who the hell are we? And then maybe look for an American Legion hall or just some really
Yeah,
affordable
yes.
wedding hall or something. So I went home. Months later, he calls me up. He goes, hey Javi, they said yes. And I'm like, who said yes? I don't remember this conversation.
You're like, yes
From
to what?
he goes, the Cartoon Art Museum said yes, they would like to host us for the Latino Comics Expo. And I was like,
Nice.
blank, blank, blank. Wow. I go, well, I guess we better put one on. And we ended up putting the first show on. Yeah, I think probably May of 2011. In their museum, really small, modest size of our expo. I think we had 12 artists, maybe 10
Hmm.
tables, 12 tables, and just by the people I kind of knew off the top of my head, that's about 10 people, and then a couple of people in the San Francisco area.
Yeah.
So yeah, right there, 2011, we did the first one as a 2-day event. The audience came in. I'm very proud of the fact that that was the first audience, when you think about it, ever. There's like a guinea pig audience. The first audience exposed to a Latino comic convention. So
Yeah.
they walked in. Some didn't know what it was. They just knew it was comics. And then we told them, oh no, these are Latino creators specifically
Yeah.
doing all kinds of comics. Some of it's based on their different cultures. Some of it's based on whatever mythology. Some of
Hmm.
it's just stuff you'd find in any comic shop. But if you were looking for Latino voices and you want to support them, that's the
That
place
place is
to
a
do it.
place.
So it was a great one first time event.
Was it was the first time a lot of work, or were the uh the other Latino cons more work because more people wanted to join the artist alley? Like, was it
Yeah,
more intense as it got bigger? I did, right?
yeah, yeah. No, good question. But the first time it's your first time, even though I had done conventions already, as an exhibitor for
Yeah,
some 10
but you were
years,
at
and
the
before
helm.
that as a fan. Yeah, how do I put on a good show? What's a good layout of the tables? Well, it's based on the space. What's a good programming of panels? Because I came up with all
Mhm.
the panels, a good variety based on the artists you had available. Uh, what's the best way to advertise? And of course, the internet was already up and running.
Yeah,
We were still doing a lot of postcards and posters and having them put in around the city and such like that. And then probably doing the MySpace back then. I'm not sure. Maybe Facebook was up and running by then, but
yeah,
um, so it was a lot of work in that. Okay, how do I do this? But then, like you said, now the next year, now we got some more artists who want and then we got more audience we probably have to accommodate.
yeah.
And then when eventually after our third show at the Cartoon Art Museum, we had to tell them very politely, hey guys, you know what? We we need more space, so
Hmm.
we're gonna have to go to another location. And they totally were fine with that. They
Yeah,
understood. I mean, we're all still friends to this day. Obviously,
yeah.
he's very professional. They understood, like, no, you guys are
Oh,
growing. Good for
absolutely.
you guys.
Yeah.
So
And I know that you retired from sending it up, and you somebody else is taking over. Why did you retire? Is it just because like it was just too much? I would imagine, like, how long does it take to set up that con? Is it like 4 months, or is it 6 months? Like, how, what is the length of getting to that day?
yeah, because as soon as one show's done, you want to just put it away and forget about it.
Yeah.
I remember Daniel Craig saying in an interview after one of the Bond movies, he's like, "The last thing I want to do is play Bond again. I'd rather slit my wrist." And of course, everybody got all pissed off. Oh, he hates playing Bond. No, no, it's people don't understand. It's so much work. You love it, but you're
Yeah,
glad it's over. Okay, now I don't have to deal with it for a while because we don't need to do it right away.
yeah,
But we start kicking ideas around that same year after the show's over. But then we don't really start getting on it, getting with whoever the location's going to be, the host site.
yeah.
Then we really start for about 6 or 4. Ideally, should have 6 or 4 months to start planning everything. Right, the
Wow.
space, your guest list, your what do you call it? You're going after sponsors and all that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a
sometimes
lot of work.
things don't work. That's a tremendous amount of work. So to answer why I retired at my young age, no, it's because we had done 10 shows already. I go, you know what? 10 years is a great milestone.
Hmm.
But I told her I have to just retire because I can't afford 3, 4, 5 months out of the year concentrated work during the
Yeah,
year putting the expo on when I have to be continuing working on my
on
graphic
your stuff.
novels, my comics, my own appearances and events,
Yeah,
my
of
teaching.
course.
So luckily, we have a person we worked with on a previous show, Bobby Hernandez, Chicago Bobby, they all call him, because he's from Chicago. Um, he came out to one of our shows in I think 2014
Mhm.
in San. I got an email one day out of the blue, right, as we're prepping the show, me and
Yeah,
Ricardo, and it's like, hey, my name's Bobby, and I'm really interested in comics, and I was looking up Latino conventions, and I saw you guys, and it sounds so exciting what you're doing.
yeah.
He's all can me and my brother come out and help? And I'm like, wow, he's offering to come out from Chicago to help us. I told him we don't have any budget for any help right now, any
Yeah.
hotels or flights.
As a
He's like, no, don't worry, we just
volunteer.
want to help out. So yeah, volunteer work. So I had to tell Ricardo, like, you're not gonna believe this.
Wow,
falling out
that's
of the
amazing.
heavens was yeah.
That's really cool.
So
And
yeah.
no, what were you gonna say?
Well, they flew out. They helped us. He's a really good organizer. He's worked in the hospitality industry in Chicago for years, so he's like top notch as far as the organization and such,
Yeah.
and tending to what needs to be done for the not just the exhibitors but the patrons, the audience. So when it came time to retire, I told Bobby, hey, I'm going to step down, and I'm going to recommend to Ricardo if you want to do it.
Wow.
You can kind of take my place in the co-running it. So it's worked out, and now they're putting on the one coming up. You mentioned earlier in April,
Yeah,
April 30th, May 1st, at Long Beach at Museum of Latin American Art.
that's right. And that's really cool that it worked out that way. It's just like you throw the idea out there, and then the universe answers it. It's kind of crazy. Kind of works out that way. But for those who are not familiar with Latin American graphic novels, who would you recommend? Like, who are the best talented artists right now that people should check out?
Well, that's a really good question because I always wonder, like, so like Latino comics, it's not really a genre or medium. It's just they're comics, just like all the comics back
Yeah.
here. But a lot of the Latino comics, they're made by people of Latino American descent, Latin American descent, and sometimes you're just doing a story of whatever, a character or a space story, whatever. But sometimes, like myself and others, doing something that they're drawing from some cultural element from their own background, their
Hmm.
family background. Um, so I mean, right off the top, I'm thinking the Hernandez brothers, Jaime and Beto Hernandez, Love and Rockets fame.
Hmm.
They've been doing their books for 40 years, actually, 40th anniversary this year.
Yeah.
They
Wow.
will be at the Latino Expo this April 30th, once again. Um, so I would point people to that. I mean, there's so much work. I mean, I should always know this at the top of my head, but
Yeah.
I mean, there's mine, El Muerto. I'm sure we'll talk about. Um, Rafael Navarro, he's just celebrating this year 25th anniversary of his comic,
Hmm.
Sonambulo. It's former masked Mexican wrestler turned private eye.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you guys like the old wrestling films like Santo and those guys,
Hmm.
think of Santo in a film noir film noir
That's pretty
movie.
nice. That's sick. And for those who are not familiar with your work, what is El Muerto about for our audience who are just really the first time checking you out? Can you give us like your how did you start it? What's the story about, and how it changed your life?
Yeah, absolutely. A dead man did change my life. That's the tagline there. I like that. Yeah, so it's 24 years this year. Next year I'm celebrating my 25th anniversary of doing comics, starting with El Muerto. Grew up as a comic fan, like all of us. And at one point, I thought, oh, well, I want to work in comics. I want to work on Iron Man and Batman and whatever.
Yeah.
And then this is throughout probably the 80s. And then I'd start reading, thank God, all these very good magazines and other reports. You start reading about the way, like the old time people were treated in comics, like the creators. Some of
Yeah.
the creators, the way they create these things and they don't
Pretty
get the
shitty.
respect or the appreciation or the money or
Yeah.
whatever. And it kind of made me like, now I'll just say it. I just thought it was like sounds like a scummy industry
Mm,
in some regards, like the business practices, right? Of
yeah.
the owners. I'm talking about the artists and writers and editors or the fans, um, or the whole company. Just there's certain elements about it. You got to be
It's,
careful, like any
it's
any art field. So I go, yeah, I don't think that's for me, and I don't think my art style fits with what
the
the comics
mainstream,
are
right?
probably looking. Yeah, the mainstream is looking for, even back in the '90s when I was contemplating it. But I started learning about self-published comics. I mean, Ninja Turtles was already out since the mid '80s, late
80s.
'80s, whatever, early. Yeah.
Yeah, and they
So
started
that
off
was
selling their comic book in the garage, right? And they
it's
just
the
became popular.
it's the perfect self-publishing, black and white self-published lesson for anyone to
Yeah.
read up on. Um, Boy, I mean, we could talk about them for hours.
Oh,
That
I
was like
agree.
that was a lightning in the bottle thing. They got a cartoon deal right away and everything. But so for me, I go, well, you know what? Maybe I can make a comic, but I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to go work on Hawkman, whatever. I'm going to make up my own character.
Hmm.
So I go, well, I want to do something with Aztec mythology and Dia de los Muertos or Day of the Dead folklore, which back in '98 when I did the first issue, you would find very little, if anything, about Day of the Dead in comics.
Hmm.
You certainly wouldn't find it on your shelf at Target and Walmart like
Oh,
you do
definitely.
now.
Yeah.
But Day of the Dead was around because I knew about it. And like mostly in the Southwest, a lot of the communities would have the Day of the Dead festivals and such. And then Aztec mythology was nowhere near as prevalent in our pop culture as Hercules and Thor and all those guys.
Yeah.
Um, so I go, let me about Aztec mythology and let me learn more about Day of the Dead, how that's done.
Hmm.
So with those two ideas, like somehow I'm going to take those two ideas and mash them together. I don't know how they're related or what, but I came up with this concept. Well, like there's this young man, and he's born on Day of the Dead, November 2nd. And on his 21st birthday, he gets killed in a car accident, and he ends up getting resurrected in the Aztec land of the dead, Mictlan. And of course, he meets the god of death, Mictlantecutli, and another god, Tezcatlipoca, the god of dreams, and they sacrifice him and send him back to Earth a year later as this this
Yeah.
undead, this Aztec zombie. Turns out to be El Muerto is his name eventually. So that was my idea. Like I just came up with that on the spot. Again, just come up with something on the spot, and then you kind of reverse engineer it. Like, well, how did he be? How did
Yeah.
he get in that place? Who is he? What are the gods doing? Da da da. Um, but the origin, the concept came pretty quick. But I guess that comes with reading,
Of course.
all these books back, hundreds of
It
stories on
helps.
Thor
Yeah.
and Captain America and X-Men and whatever.
Yeah, those are the tools of the trade, man. Like that's what you put in your toolbox, and that's how you. It's like okay, that's how you help develop your work. And with I know that you developed this, which is like you reconstructed, you redid it, El Muerto, in a mature artwork. I was reading your interview with Dr. Rojas, and he said that this is El Muerto, but like with a mature artist eye. And if you could just tell us more about Days of the Dead right here. Can you tell us
I
about
like that.
this book? What's that?
I like that term, mature artist eye. Yeah, because I say the art's better, and before it wasn't, but that sounds better. It's my mature
Yeah,
art
mature
phase.
artist. So
Yes.
mature art. Right.
Well, your art gets better, like anything. Yeah, but I like the way you put it. Yeah. So the original comic came out in '98. The first issue was a photocopied black and white comic. And then like a couple of years later, I did the follow-up issue.
Hmm.
They say Dave Stevens is slow, or other. I was slow back then. I did a second book. I did a second story. I did some short stories in between. Like I used to put out a newsletter, like a physical printed
Yeah.
newsletter. So I'd put like maybe a short story in there. But the second proper El Muerto story was 2004. I'm sorry, 2004. And then I did the third chapter in 2008. And then around 2015, I go, well, I got to finish the origin part of the origin story. So I did that last chunk, right? And I
Hmm.
go, let me put all four stories together. But I looked at the first three. I go, you know what? That's my immature artist phase. The art just was not as good as the new thing, the new
Hmm.
pages.
Yes.
Even like the writing, the story, the narrative. I
Of
mean,
course.
it's just better today.
Yeah.
I'm just better. So I go, you know what? Let me redraw those. Let me redraw those whatever first 100 pages,
Yeah.
and then I redrew them and then matched up to the new stuff. So that's what that book you were just sharing right now, published in I think 2017 originally, Days of the Dead. It's like the full complete origin story, first adventure of El Muerto, and I'm
Yeah,
working on
man.
the second book now.
And that's what happens when you worked on your craft for such a long time that you just get better at it. And uh when you look at your old stuff, you kind of cringe. I'm like, ah.
Yeah,
And then you just have a sharper eye with like detail, and just like you're more sharper as an artist. And you could totally tell. Like I was reading it, I was looking at it in the story. It was pretty. I mean, it's great, man. Like, and your book is being taught as a course in Dr. Rojas' class, and that's
yeah.
incredible. I mean, how does that make you feel that your work is being taught in a class?
Yeah, it's a trip. Dr. Rojas up at Modesto College. She teaches it in her English classes, English composition, and I think
Hmm.
also some Chicano studies classes. Yeah, it's a trip. Back before the COVID era, I actually went up to her school to visit because she wanted to go. Can you come visit the students for two classes? And then she's all, I'll help you get a signing at the comic shop down the street.
Hmm.
So it made the whole trip worthwhile. Um, so yeah, I walked into class and then like, okay, she's all, okay, students, you've read the book, we've done some exercises. Any questions for Mr. Hernandez? And of course, they had some really good questions. It's funny when I was done with those two classes, I told her, I thanked her for bringing me up, but I thanked her for the experience. I go, man, because I've been doing comics forever now, but I've never had basically a chance to have like a focus group.
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, tell me what you think of the book. Just let me know, or any questions it's not clear,
Yeah.
whatever. Because when you meet the fans at the shows, they haven't read the book. They buy it and they go home, right?
Hmm.
And they may post, hey, I like the book, but to be there for an hour with this group of 10, 15, 20 students around the same age as the character, that's another good thing that helped me. Um, I got a really good sense of what they liked about the character, what appeals to them, what they'd like to see in it.
Hmm.
Um, One thing about the suggestions, what they'd like to see, no offense, but that's fine. They could, I'm not going to change any idea I have based on that, and you shouldn't.
Yeah.
But there's things I have like, oh, good, they're going to like where it's going to go with this, like the relationship with his girlfriend
Hmm.
or this part, because they were curious about what happened with his parents, and so I don't take advice like give me ideas what I need to do, but I will like, okay, you're going to like what's coming up, or you're not going to like what's coming up
Hmm.
based on what they were hoping to happen. But you got to stick to your guns as the storyteller, the creator.
Oh, for reals. Because I mean, arts are objective, and some people are gonna like it, and some people aren't, and that's just how it goes. And if you don't mind, what was one of the things that they didn't like? If they didn't like, if you don't mind me, if you don't mind sharing.
Well, no, no, I'm trying to think. Well, the stuff they wanted him to get back with his girlfriend because in the
Uh-huh.
in the book Days of the Dead, like him and Maria broken up. So
Yeah.
when the story starts, he's a free agent, but they're like they got to get back together.
Hmm.
And well, in case anyone's watching this, I can't tell you what I'm going to do, but they'll be happy.
Okay. Cool.
They'll be and they were very sad to see his friend Zach, his best Diego's best friend Zach, because in the story I should let your listeners know. I don't think I finished it right. He gets killed in a car accident. He comes back a year later, but he's got this group of friends. He's got a best friend Zach,
Yeah.
other friends Susie and everything. Where's your friend been for a year? And then he comes back.
Yeah.
As of right now in the storyline, they don't know he's back because he's down in Mexico.
Yeah.
But he's going to come back into their lives. But he's got to come up with he's got to tell them why he's been gone for a year. And spoiler alert, he's not going to lie and say I was knocked out for a year. If you can't trust your best friends with your secret that you're El Muerto, the Aztec zombie, what good are your best friends, right?
Well, it's true. It's in like you're going against what the mainstream shows. You know what I mean? Like love triangles and like lying to your best friend and like tropes. And if it's you're very right. If like you can't tell your best friend what's going on, then are they really your best friend? You know? And
I didn't think about that. You're right. It is a trope, right? They always have to lie. Yeah.
yeah,
Peter, where you been? Oh, I fell down.
yeah.
Yeah,
He's
you're
like,
right.
oh, oh, well,
I
you'll
just
figure it out in the sequel.
I just thought 1 year is too big that's too big a story to come up with. Where was
Yeah.
I for a year? So yeah.
Um, you know, what advice would you give an independent artist who's starting out right now? What setbacks besides the financial aspects of creating a comic book artist face from your experience?
The financial mountain to climb is always going to be there. It's always for most of us, all of
Yeah,
us. I'm pretty sure.
yeah,
That's why we're self-publishing. That's why we're doing our own independent work. So I won't even go into all that. So that's
yeah,
there, folks.
yeah,
Figure it out.
yeah.
The other part, the worst part, it's worse because it's coming from you personally, is your own self-doubts.
Hmm.
I mean, your family, your friends, whatever, they may say, "Oh, why are you doing that? You're not going to make it. It's too hard. Go work for a
Yeah,
company, DC or something." So that's going to be difficult, and that's natural, right? Your friends, they
hmm.
like you. They don't want to see you get hurt or waste your money.
Of
But
course.
you yourself, you the artist looking in the mirror or doubting yourself, that's the worst hurdle you got. You can be your worst enemy because you'll stop yourself cold. You'll listen
Of
to
course.
yourself, tell yourself that no, I can't do it. Yeah, you're right. This is dumb and da da da.
It's the
I had
self
a moment
doubt.
like that. The self doubt will cripple you. I had a huge moment like that. It was my second convention, right? I was up in
Hmm.
Oakland back when WonderCon used to be held up in Oakland. Shows
Yeah,
you how long ago that was. 98. I went up there and my friend Rody, I stayed at his apartment. He's like, yeah, come on up here and stay at my place. We'll do the show. So it's the first day of the show, right? It's barely my second show. And I'm sitting next to him, and he had already been there a year before, right? He already had a little bit of an audience with his stuff,
yeah,
Pablo's Inferno. Um, so he's doing really good. Like I'm looking at him next to me. All these people, and they're
Yeah.
happy to see him because they knew him. And I'm getting no traffic at my table. People walk
Mm.
by, they don't even look, or they look and they, or worse, they look and they walk away. They put the book down. And after a couple of hours, I was like, this sucks. So I go, hey, Rody, do me a favor. I'm going to go out for a walk. Can you watch my table? He's like, yeah, sure. So I took off. I'm walking through the convention hall. It was in a hotel, and I went up to the bar. And I'm not even a big drinker, but I sat in the bar, right? What do you call it, skulking? Like, this sucks. This is stupid. And I think I had a screwdriver, the orange juice and vodka.
Yeah.
And everybody's watching the football game and they're having a good time, and I hate football, so it makes it worse, right? Everybody's happy but me. And I go, this comic thing's not going to work. The first time was okay, 2 months ago, but this I'm wasting my time, too much money I'm wasting. And
Yeah.
so I go, I'm going to go downstairs. It's like 2 o'clock. I'm going to go downstairs on my table. I'm going to pack it up, and I can drive home, be back in LA by 8 o'clock,
Mm.
watch Baywatch or something stupid. So I go back to the table, committed to go home. And as I get to the table, I see Rhodey's looking up for me, like, "Hey, Hop, get over here." He's like, "This girl wants to buy some books. This guy is from the Oakland Tribune or whatever. He wanted to ask some questions. He's a reporter, and this guy wants some stickers." So I sat down, I helped everybody, I sold the books, and sold the stickers, and then I answered a couple of questions for the reporter. And I sat down laughing, and I looked at Rhodey. I'm like, "Man, you don't know how lucky we are." He's like, "What?" He's like, "I was about to quit." I'm laughing how stupid this sounds. I was about to quit and go home. He's like, "What?"
Yeah.
So I stayed there the whole Saturday, went back Sunday,
Yeah.
So after that, I never had such a low moment like that.
I
You
got you,
still have
man.
little things here and
Of
there, but
course.
never like, "Oh, I'm going to quit. This sucks."
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, everybody who they have self doubt where you want to quit, but there's always there's some validation where the universe tells you like, no, don't quit, just go a little bit more, and the universe gives you that validation with that interview, and with that newspaper, and that person buying your comic book, and later on, somebody approached you in the San Diego Comic Con to they're interested in adapting your comic book into a movie, which is
yeah, I never
it's
turned
pretty
down
it's a big deal.
never turned down an appearance at a convention. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was in 2001, summer of 2001. And my friend Carlos Saldana, who I mentioned earlier, he does a comic called Burrito. He told me, he's like, "Hey, Javier, are you going to go to Comic Con?" I go, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, because there's a reporter from NPR." This is 2001. He wants to interview Latino comic creators specifically. Like, to me, this guy was ahead of the curve, like seeking out that whole
Yeah.
Latino genre part of comics. So I went to this, set up in the table there, and then the guy came by, the reporter came by, and he sat behind my table with me, and we talked, had a good little interview, and then okay, thanks, bye bye. And I go, "Okay, I felt good, I did it." I don't know if I'm ever going to hear the interview because I forgot to ask for his, what program it was, whatever. But I knew it was like, this is good. It's NPR guy. That's good enough for me. Um, Months later, I get a mail. This is 2001, so my PO box was already up and running. Yeah, I got an actual letter, folks, from a small production company. I'm like, well, that's interesting.
Yeah. It's old
I
school.
opened it and like, "Hey, hi Javier, I'm a Tyler. I'm an assistant for a director here. We heard your interview on the radio, and we're interested in the comic. Where can we get copies of it?" And they go, "We couldn't find any locally. I guess they went down to Meltdown Comics, which
Hmm.
is no longer around, sadly. But it was right there on Sunset." I go, "Well, I got two comics you can buy if you want to send me the money, and I'll ship them to you." So it was like $7. It was like the original Muerto comic, and then I think I had like a thing called Manga Muerto, a small little zine I did.
Yeah.
It's a different version of El Muerto as a Japanese hero with a
Japanese.
giant robot, but
Yeah.
we'll save that for another show. So I got a check for. I didn't even raise the price. I didn't say, "Oh, it's $50." I got $7, 4 and 3, whatever,
Yeah.
and shipping, whatever. So I got the check, my first Hollywood check, I guess. Sent him the books, and then the guy wrote me back, "Hey, okay, Brian, the director, he's out of the country on another film right now, but when he gets back, yeah, he definitely wants to check in with you." So Brian got back, and then they contacted me, "Hey, so can you come meet with him?" It's like, well, you got a production meeting, you know what that's about. So it was his office was right across the street from the old, for those who know in the area, on Sunset. There used to be a Tower Records
Yeah. I
on
remember where it
Sunset.
was.
Everything I talk about was used to be. There used to be a Meltdown. There used to be a Tower Records, but
I'm
That's
getting
the
to
march.
that point too, man. So I remember Tower
It's
Records and Warehouse
it's the
Records, and
march of time. Yeah,
yeah,
we're at Licorice Pizza. So I go there, meet with Brian. We talk for an hour. He has all kinds of questions, but I felt very comfortable with him. It wasn't like because you can be very defensive, like, oh wait, they want to steal these ideas. They want.
yeah,
I could tell he was out because he's a writer director. I could tell he's asking as an artist. Hey, why is this happening? Hey, why are the gods doing this? Hey, how come this is? You know what I mean? They
yeah,
were legit questions on story. So I told him I didn't have a lot of answers at the time because, well, honestly, Brian, this is my first story. I don't have everything planned at the time. I didn't have it all
yeah,
mapped out. But I was just being honest. Maybe I didn't know any better. Um, and he goes, and at the end of the hour, he sits up like, well, obviously, okay, I'm interested in making a movie out of this. How do you feel about that? I go, well, I wouldn't not be interested. So,
yeah.
long story short, it was a long process, maybe a year or two. Like,
Yeah, I could imagine.
yeah. I mean, you got to always get a lawyer.
Yeah,
Here's another tip. And I still today get people tell me they signed something they didn't have a lawyer. Like, that's terrible.
yeah,
Get a lawyer from day one before you get sent anything to read. And then got a lawyer, and then Brian put a producer onto this. Producer he had worked with, Larry Ratner, independent producer. I looked up Larry online at the time, and I saw some of his credits, but then I saw that he was one of the story writers on Halloween 4
oh, okay.
from 1988. It was
Hmm.
like the 10-year return of Michael Myers.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, well, luckily I love the Halloween series. Okay, if one of the Halloween a story writer is involved, this is interesting.
yeah.
So I'd meet with Larry. I mean, you work in film, Christian, and other people. The courtship is lovely. Like, hey, you want to go to have dinner here?
You're like,
And they didn't go
sure.
to Taco Bell. They didn't go to Taco Bell and McDonald's like me and my friends do. They go to just
Like a fancy
three
place
dollar
where it's like,
hamburger.
yeah, they're dining
Yeah,
you out.
yeah, but it's
Pretty.
still a regular place. But the burgers are $20 instead of
Yeah.
two. Like, okay, fine. Um,
Or if you're buying.
so yeah, yeah, exactly. So the conversations are going on, and then like at the time he goes, "Well, I'm going to give you an offer, send you an offer," and I forward it right to my
The
lawyer,
lawyer.
and then the lawyer would read it over with me. So then here's how it works: me and the lawyer we talk on the phone privately. Okay, so here's what's going on, Javier. Item one, item two, blah 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 blah,
Yeah,
and I want to change this and that and that. So now I would forward his changes to the producer,
that's cool.
and of course he would bounce them back after with his lawyer. And then sometimes I would look at the contract, not understanding half of it, but then I would ask like, hey, what about, can we get something for this? Or
Hmm.
can we change this number here? Or
Yeah.
could I keep these rights to myself on this? He's like, yeah, let's try that. And the contract got hashed out, and then I went and signed it at the producer's office. That was like a historic moment for me. Like, wow, you're signing your character's life away, at least the media rights.
Yeah.
The one rights, so they kept the media rights. What do media rights mean? Film, television, video game. Now would be streaming,
Hmm.
maybe theatrical plays, stuff like that. But I kept everything else
Mm.
adamantly. Otherwise, I wouldn't have signed it. I still make comics. I could still make comics. I could still do posters, prints. I
Yeah.
could even license my character. Like if someone wanted to make action figures at the time
Mm.
based on my artwork, I could do that on my own. They could license action figures based on if there was any movie
I gotcha.
merchandise. It would have been based on the movie. I'd get a little cut of that, but I would get 100% of anything based on my comic art. So, um, and then we eventually got stuck filming the movie 2005, I want to say. Yeah, it's all ancient history now. Yeah. One of the big things, of course, when the script was finally done after like several drafts, um, I literally went to the producer's office with the director, Brian, and like, okay, the script looks like it's ready to go, right, guys? Yeah. I go, and I recommended, I thought about Wilmer at the time. This
Hmm.
was 2005. That
Yeah.
70s show was season
Popular.
3 or 4.
Super popular.
Yeah. And I loved it from the first season because I grew up in the 70s. So I go, oh, yeah, I missed that ugly wallpaper and you know, the yellow couches and those
Hmm.
goofy cookie jars, whatever. Um, I didn't get all the pot references, but I skipped out on that. But I thought he was a great actor at the time because, well, blame Hollywood. How many young Latino actors were
It's true.
around in 2005? He was huge on that 70s show. So they approached him, and when they told me that he was interested, I was like, wow, because your dreams are like it's like telling Ricardo contact Cartoon Art Museum. Oh, let's try Wilmer.
Yeah.
Oh, he said yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh. Um, so sometimes you feel like Cinderella, like all this wonderful
It's
things
a
are
dream come
happening.
true, man. Like your family must have been ecstatic when this was happening to you. It's like, wow, this is like a Hollywood,
Trippy,
Hollywood dream come true.
tripping out because we're just a middle class, working class Mexican American
Yeah,
family from Whittier, California. You know, I mean, the biggest thing out of Whittier before me was Richard Nixon, I think.
yeah. He went to
So
the university, I think, right?
yeah, Whittier College and Whittier High School.
Really, I didn't
Which,
know that.
by the way, Back to the Future fans, they
Of
filmed Back
course,
to the Future
I
at
think
Whittier High
every nerd
School.
knows that.
Well, there we go.
Oh
So
yeah, what was your experience like? Meeting Wilmer for the first time. Like, was he like a humble guy? Was he did he have his entourage? Like, what was he like? Was he personable?
I'm trying to remember the first time I saw him because I don't. Oh, I know when. It wasn't the set. It wasn't even in the producer's office. So we planned an art show for me, right? So this is the fall of 2004. I know we're going to start filming in February 2005. So again, scheming with the producer Larry, it's like, hey Larry, you know what? We should try to get an art show for me
Hmm.
to help promote the film, but also
Your
sell my
work
work,
too.
whatever.
Yeah.
So we contacted this. It's funny. This gallery, which is no longer there in Santa Monica, the Froden Gallery. Um, hey guys, I told them I threw the whole movie thing. Yeah, I got a movie coming out starring Wilmer Valderrama based on my comic. You guys want to host a show for me, an art show? They're like, yeah, that's fine.
Like, hell yeah.
So we thought it'd be brilliant. Like, well, we got to invite Wilmer to the art opening, right? That was in November, and he had already signed. So there I am in the gallery. Yeah, my family's there, right? All proud, my friends,
Yes.
and I had a little table set up so I can sell some comics, and I had all my art up on the walls and stuff. And then I look up at the door, and Wilmer walks in with his girlfriend at the time, Lindsay Lohan.
Hmm.
They were a big item back then, you know.
Yeah, I remember.
And I told my friend Bernice, I go, is that Wilmer? So yeah, I'm like, holy blank, 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 blank. So I know Larry goes up to him, and I see Larry starts walking him over to me, right? And yeah, that's where I met him. Larry's all, Wilmer, this is Javier, the creator of the comic. Javier Wilmer. Hey, Wilmer, how's it going, man? Play it cool, play it cool. Um, he's like, yeah, man, this is all cool, man. I want to get a couple of your pieces later. So, and he kept walking around with Lindsay. It was funny. They were outside for a minute, and so I had nieces and nephew at the time. Kids, 8, 9,
Yeah.
younger, a lot of girls. So they knew Lindsay from, I guess, the Disney show, whatever.
Hmm.
So they're all outside. We're all outside with Wilmer, and everyone's taking pictures with Lindsay because they know her. All
Yeah.
my nieces did. And I felt bad. I'm like, oh, I hope one of my nephews goes up to Wilmer, like, because she was known with the
No,
kids,
she was like
because of
hella
her.
popular back then. Like she was like I remember I used to work at a studio, and she was talking to this she was going to be on Ugly Betty, and I remember like the black van going in there and the paparazzi's just hounding her like vultures.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I'm like, what? Oh,
Right.
that's pretty sad. And but yeah, I could only imagine that was at the height of her popularity.
But the good thing was the paparazzi. I guess they didn't tell them that night or something. Thankfully, because it would have been cool, I guess, to have the art show in the paper. But it
Yeah.
was just us people at the art show, my nephews and nieces, spending time with Wilmer and Lindsay. And of course, I got a picture with Wilmer from our director.
Yeah.
I gave him my back in the days like the handheld, like an actual camera with film in it. And yeah,
Yeah.
it was actual roll camera. So that was the first time my director shot me and Wilmer because 4 months later we had a cameo. I had a cameo in the film with Wilmer
Yeah.
right there in Boyle Heights at the front gates of Evergreen Cemetery.
Hmm.
I had a couple of speaking lines, so
Yeah.
I
I
guess it
remember.
was enough to get me on Internet Movie Database, my one credit so far.
Did he get a SAG card? Because I
No,
know
he
some
didn't. I
people
know that
they do one lot, some dialogue, and they're automatically in the SAG. You know?
I was talking to Pete here earlier. Was it the guy who created Winter Soldier,
Hmm.
Ed Brubaker? I guess was it him or Jim Starlin? I don't know. Some of these comic book guys who create these characters for these big companies, they don't get much money for the character, but they get more money for their cameo, which is
Yeah.
crazy. I mean,
Yes.
Hollywood pays there's much more money there, and they
Yeah.
better unions and such. So it's kind of funny. I don't have a SAG card, but I may be losing out on some money. I don't know.
Well, in another universe. Like I have a
Or
comment
yeah.
from Philip Victor. I don't know if you met him. He's exhibited at the Latino Comic Con, and I actually became friends with him because our table was next to each other. But he asked you a question: will there ever be a team up with El Muerto and Sana? I can't pronounce this name, Sana
Oh yes, I
Abulo.
see. Sonambulo.
Yeah.
Sonambulo. Yeah, that's Raphael's character. It means sleepwalker.
Oh, okay.
Um, yes, we did announce it somewhere, Philip, me and Ralph. We were somewhere publicly, so we know, like, okay, we publicly put it out. And we've been talking about it forever because I've known Ralph since my college days in the 90s. So he has his character, Mexican luchador. I got my character, Aztec Day of the Dead character. So, all egos aside, we figure, okay, we got two of the iconic Mexican cultural icons, a
Yeah.
wrestler character and a Day of the Dead character. So, yeah, we definitely have plans to do a team up, and it's got to be good and big. It's got to be published like a treasury size comic at least.
Hmm.
Um, in fact, I was talking to Ralph some months ago, and I was throwing him out a couple ideas I had. So, I mean, it's not coming out next year or the year after. It's
But
early
it's in the
stages.
works.
We promised ourselves we got to do it. I mean, hell, the demand at this point. The good thing
Yeah.
about waiting forever, people like Philip and everybody, thankfully, hey, are you gonna do it? So, yes, here it goes again. We will be doing a Muerto Sonambulo team up or
Is it?
Sonambulo Muerto team up.
Is it? I guess is it hard to collaborate with fellow artists? I mean, since you work on your own, people as writers and artists, it's the solitary work. But when you start collaborating with somebody else, is it difficult because you're sharing, two forms into you're trying to create one story? Is it? Do you find it difficult, or is it just kind of like it's pretty easy for you to collaborate with
No,
somebody
no, no. It's Charlton Heston. You're gonna have to take this from my dead cold hands.
else?
Um, yeah, collaborating with comics is always interesting because what do you want to give up, or at least what do you want to share, or like, well, I want to do the voice of the character,
Mhm.
writing it, whatever. With Ralph, we have we've been friends forever. We'll be able to work on it. We're already talking
Gotcha.
about different ways to do it. But um, let me tell you this: working on the movie, because I worked on it for 4 weeks,
Hmm.
which is a short shoot, but man,
Yeah,
I don't care if it's 4 weeks or 4 months. You know this. It's 12-hour days minimum, or 16,
it's grueling.
and it's grueling. You work for 5 days, and then I remember even going into the office on the sixth day, like just to help out with whatever
Yes.
logistics. So I'd have one day off. When you get home at night, whatever time it is, that's it. Your day's done. Like,
Hmm.
no doing laundry, no going to the post office. Like, get home,
Yeah,
eat something, go to
recover.
sleep, recover, wake up. So the one day off was, oh, I got laundry to do. I got to go run to the market, whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? No free time. So then when my director told me before we started filming, he's like, Javier, I'm going to tell you right now, or warn you, whatever he said. Once you start working on the film, because I did work on the film, that was in my contract.
Mhm.
People say, what did you do? I just stood there. And I had a, and in my contract, I did ask for a weekly salary. Other than
Excellent.
getting paid for the rights, it's like, well,
Yeah,
I told my lawyer, well, I want to get paid if I'm being on the set.
that's awesome. That's so
So,
pretty cool.
yeah, well, that's why I say lawyer, 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 lawyer up. Um, so yeah, the director, it's like you're going to be in a bubble for the 4 weeks that we're
Mhm.
working. And at first I'm like, yeah, of course you're going to say that. But once the last day was over, I felt like I could breathe again. Again, it's not a bad thing. I loved making the film,
Yeah,
but it's like,
yeah.
wow. So a few days later, I remember after I decompressed, a few days later at night at my desk, I pulled out the new sheet of paper. I got to start working on a new story at the time. And I remember drawing it, working on it. I remember being so relieved because it was like, wow, now I got not I got the character back, but I got my 100% freedom back. Like,
Hmm.
it's just me.
Yeah,
Every word, every letter, every good or dumb idea on that page is mine.
yeah,
Whereas on the film, I was like, even though I created the idea on the film set, I'm probably like, I don't know, 1% of the crew. Because the crew did all the work. I didn't do anything.
yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a nice change. I didn't have a problem working with the film crew. I'd probably rather work with the film crew again, or a Netflix TV crew,
Of course, man. I
than
see it.
working than working with someone like co-writing El Muerto or something like that. Like, well, the comic I think is me for the most part. Like, I like that it's just me, but film, television, cartoon, video game, whatever.
I
Yeah.
totally see like El Muerto like being on a streaming platform eventually. I don't know if that's something that you could, if you're pursuing, or are you waiting for somebody to do that? Is that something that you want to happen to see El Muerto be like an animated series, like either like on Netflix or Hulu or even Disney? Because Disney's looking for a lot of diversity work. Is that something that you are hunting to get done?
Yeah, I'm always open to it. Yeah, the thing now, we got a much bigger buffet option. Like, oh well, yeah, a streaming series would be neat
Hmm.
where people just download it, whatever. Or I'm still attracted to the idea of a movie. I mean, I do like the idea of going to the premiere, right?
Yeah,
Premiere night. It's the big movie on the big screen. It's a film. But yeah, the reality, I mean, yeah, I don't think there's anything unattractive about the streaming networks, whether it's Apple, Netflix, Hulu, whoever. 'Cause that seems to be such. I mean, it seems to be the thing now.
yeah,
Um, an animated series, that's a whole nother venue because you can do a lot more, I think, or at least differently, the way it
yeah,
moves and everything. A weekly TV. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure which one I would pick.
hmm,
Like, not like I can pick, but whatever I get offered, I have to see
yeah.
what comes up. I
But
mean,
you're
I've got
open
little
to it.
things. Oh, absolutely. No, I'm not one of these guys who like, oh, I don't care about my comics, my comic. I
Yeah,
go, well, yeah, the comic's the comic, but you want to turn down all that money? I mean, you're not doing yourself any favors. And what's wrong with your character getting exposed out to a wider audience, even if it's not 100% your vision, because the other people are writing or directing it.
hmm,
Um, I always looked at the Muerto thing like the Adam West Batman. Like, there's a perfect example of we all love our Batman from the comic, whatever era you grew up in,
hmm.
whether it's Dark Knight or the new stuff or whatever. But I love the Adam West version of Batman just as much. I don't look at it like it's stupid. I go, no, it's different. It's funny, but it's great. I love
Oh,
the Animus. It's Ace the
I know.
Bat chiming in. Good,
My,
good timing on
yeah, yeah, I
your
know. It's
audio crew.
sorry about that. It's the hounds from hell on the bottom.
They're always nipping
It's
at
okay.
our heels. Don't worry. It's
That's
a good
okay. They're
metaphor
done.
for life.
But you know what? I think let's go back to they're done barking. But
Yeah.
who was your like influences getting into the comic book world? Like who developed your voice? Who helped you develop your voice?
Well, I've never heard it asked that way. Like, who developed it? That's a pretty good question. Influences, of course, in comics. As a kid, I read them secondhand, but the classic Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko Marvel run.
Yeah.
All the classic Marvel artists from 60s and 70s, John Romita, John Buscema, Ron Friends, um, Jim Starlin, Ross, a lot of those guys. And in the 80s, seeing these new guys,
Hmm.
particularly Frank Miller, just that really bold way of storytelling. Uh, More current stuff, last 20, 30 years. Mike Allred's Madman.
Hmm.
When Madman landed, I was like, wow, check out. You can do wow, you could do like a black and white, quirky superhero. That's the way I can describe Madman, which is what I think, at least I was trying to land with El Muerto, somewhere in that kind of little surreal, little macabre, but also kind of maybe retro, but quirky, oddball. Also, filmmakers like Tim Burton,
Yeah.
David Lynch, Ed Wood.
Yeah.
I'd
Ed
have to
Wood's
say,
great
like,
movie.
I think I hope to land like in that area as far as their storytelling. Right? I'm not saying
Mhm.
success, whatever. That'd be great, but that type of, or Charles Adams, Adams Family, his comic, and of course the TV show, Beetlejuice, stuff like that always appeals to me. Where it's, I mean, I like horror, I like dark horror,
Mhm.
but I also like where it's like oddball horror, almost
Yeah.
maybe humorous, but not completely comedy. Um, then by the Day of the Dead festival, the Aztec mythology and folklore,
Yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff goes into El Muerto, definitely. Yeah, film music is a big thing. Like when I'm drawing my comic or writing it, doing, I always have music playing, and a lot
What
of
kind of
film
music
score
do you
like
listen to when
Ennio
you
Morricone or John Barry, who did the
okay.
old James Bond scores, or Danny Elfman,
Yeah.
like The Cure, The Smiths. I tell people, I don't know if it'd be El Muerto if I did grow up on The Smiths or The Cure in college, just to
And
give an idea of like the wheelhouse I'm playing with.
you know what's crazy? Like it's been 30 years since Batman Returns came out. Like, and I've been
Oh,
seeing
I
like
can't hear you
like
for a second there, Christian.
it's been 30
I'm
years
gonna get
since
Christian
Batman.
back in a second.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Christian,
Hello,
are you on?
I am on. I am on. Hello,
Oh, you can hear me. Okay.
yeah, I can hear
I
you.
can't hear Christian, but he hears me. Maybe you
Well,
can,
yeah.
sign
Let's
language.
see. Let's see. How can I do this? Let's see. Well, I just You know what's crazy for me is that I saw on Instagram that it's been 30 years since Batman Return. It's been, it's been out. I mean, like, and I want to go to a screening of it because I remember watching Batman Returns when I was a kid with my father at the $2 theater over here in Norwalk, and it completely blew my mind. Um, and it was one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, since Javier, he was talking about like his favorite movie was like
Hmm.
the Tim Burton Batman's, and it I remember watching that Batman when I was a kid, and that's one of my favorite Batmans of all time. And I think it's because like when you're watching a movie when you're a kid, it's just way more. It's just magical, and especially if the movie it's really good, then like it feels real. And when I was watching Batman Returns, it felt real. Like Danny DeVito as the Penguin, like yeah, like Colin Farrell, he did a pretty good job in the new Batman movie. You can't even tell that's him, but Danny DeVito as Batman, like that to me will always be. I mean, Danny DeVito as the Penguin in Batman, that will always be my favorite interpretation of the Penguin. But I know, like I'm probably showing my age right now, but yeah, like there was also like a time like the Happy Meals of they had a
Yeah,
Happy
no, I
Meal
didn't
of
hear.
Batman
Not familiar.
Returns, and I remember I had all
Are
the
those are
toys
they
of
out? Or,
Batman Returns, and there was like a big controversy about like the toys because the movie was so graphic, as gritty. I mean, it was so gritty that a lot of parents had a problem with McDonald's having Happy Meals of the Batman Returns, and yeah, that's my little tale of Batman. And like another thing that I loved about Tim Burton is Edward Scissorhands. That's another movie that I watched at the $2 theater, and that was another great movie. That's I can't watch Edward Scissorhands now because I'll end up crying at the end because like it's such a sad ending. Like that score with Danny Elfman, like it's incredible. That's art. That's the way cinema's supposed to be. It's supposed to make you feel something. It's like it's eye candy and it makes it thrilling and it's a love story. And if you guys haven't seen Edward Scissorhands, I don't know who hasn't seen that movie. I think you guys should definitely check it out because it's a classic. And you know what's crazy? Do you guys remember Siskel and Ebert? Like Two Thumbs Up. Siskel and Ebert, they hated all of Tim Burton's movies. It's so weird, like they hated Batman Returns. They hated Edward Scissorhands. They like gave it thumbs down. But can you hear me now, Javier?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Oh, cool, man. I kept on going with the show. I was talking about Tim Burton movies from the '90s.
Hey, your specialty. Perfect.
Woo. But yeah, okay. Let's go back to our interview. But so let's talk a little bit about the way you develop your stories. As like you just do the illustrations and then you do the the script. Is that still the case right now?
Yeah, I don't write myself a script. A lot of comic writers do, or yeah, that's fine. An actual script. I guess it kind of looks like a movie script, but it's the dialogue and the scenes. I've never done that ever. Maybe I did it once. I was going to work with somebody, but for myself, I just think of the story for months and months and months, just in my head over and over. And then when I sit down to start drawing it, I drew a rough draft on copy paper. I
Yeah,
used to call it typing paper. I'll just literally start drawing page one. I'll start drawing what panel one, and kind of scribble it out. And I draw the second panel, the third, until I get to whatever it is, 30 pages, 120 pages. And then I'll edit it. I'll go through every page, like, okay, I'm looking at it. No, these 2 pages don't work. Throw them out.
yeah,
Redraw them. Sometimes I may take 3 pages and put them 5 pages behind the other one,
yeah.
right? Like, oh, this works better later. Kind of like a film editor when they start editing the film, they start putting
Piecing
things,
the
moving
frames
things back
together.
and forth.
Yeah,
I'll do that before I draw it all. So once I have my rough draft and I'm happy with it, okay, this looks right. Then I'll draw it on the large 11 by 17 bristle paper. And yeah, first I'll pencil it, and then I'll ink the page with a inking pen, and then I'll try to get a chunk done, 5 pages, 10 pages at a time
yeah,
until I have 120 pages, whatever, done. And then I got to scan every page because I don't draw digitally, I draw on paper. I got
yeah.
to scan every page in the computer, and then I open it up, and then I'll letter it in what we call Illustrator.
Mhm.
So I'll make word. So that's when I'm writing the dialogue for the first time. Okay,
Gotcha.
what's he saying to her? Well, I already kind of know because I drew it, I created it,
Yeah.
but it lets me revise it, right? Like, okay, maybe there's not enough room in that. I didn't leave enough room on top, so I have to cut down the dialogue, which is actually a good exercise
Mm,
because it usually always ends up being better. I think it's always better whenever you're cutting stuff out, your
of
dialogue,
course.
unless you're a super great, brilliant writer,
Yeah.
which I wouldn't consider myself. It's like I'll write it. It's like, yeah, you know what? This two sentences are basically saying the exact same thing when I think about it.
Mm,
So I'm forced a lot to edit myself with the space I have in each panel. But anyway, so that's out of the comic. It's kind of like what Stan Lee says he used to do with what he called the Marvel method,
mm,
where he would sit down, he says, and tell Jack Kirby an idea for the month. Right, Doctor Doom does this. So
yeah.
then Kirby goes home and he has to draw that whole. Kirby was basically writing the story at that point, right? Because he's the setup and how Doctor Doom met the FF and what happened in between and whatever the climax and all the subplots. And Kirby would actually write dialogue like really quick in the dialogue
Yeah.
balloons. And Stanley would get it back and he'd probably often rewrite it, but he still has to write the story based on what's there, right? Like they're
Yes.
fighting Doctor Doom, he takes off whatever it is. Um, so the final flair of the language is obviously Stan's because he wrote the final draft. So anyway, for me, that's how I work. As a kid, I used to read about the Marvel method. Like, that's how you make a comic. You think about it, you
Mm,
draw it, and then you dialogue it and write it. So I can't see myself ever writing a script.
I see. It's just like
But
second
I know
nature
they're
at this
helpful.
point, you know?
Most people do.
Yeah, it's just like your method, and that works. Whatever works for you, it's just just how it is, you know. And
Right.
I know that one of your favorite writers is Ian Fleming, the writer of James Bond, because he just hammers out the script, the story, and then he he revises it. Like there's no outline; he just writes the damn thing, and then like he
Exactly. Yeah. Again, when I was a teenager reading about Fleming,
mhm,
um, that process blew me away because I thought he had to be more methodical. But he would just
yeah,
literally go to his Jamaican home, Goldeneye, which
yeah,
they made a movie with that title, which is
yeah,
bizarre. It was just his house, but he would bang out the script with no notes. He may have had notes, maybe like a name of a
yeah,
hotel in France or maybe a certain champagne, but he would literally start just typing it out like a couple hours a day,
yeah,
and then at the end of 3 months he goes back to England, and then he does a rough draft, and then he revises it.
yeah,
But again, it's so to me, it's like just with the Marvel, it's all about banging it out
yeah,
immediately, like from your head right onto the paper, and then of course you revise it. As opposed to, I mean, I love Pixar movies too, but man, I look at the behind the scenes stuff. Like there's a wall full of millions of postcards with notes,
yeah,
and I know it works for their film because the films are great.
yeah.
But I could never do that much pre-planning,
Yes, I
to
yeah,
write the
'cause
thing to death. For me,
I
like I'd be writing it to death if I did all that.
I completely understand because I do the same thing. I have my peers, they do the same thing with the wall, and it's like, wow, am I doing something wrong? Because I don't do that. I just hammer it out, and I wish I didn't have a day job because I would be totally done with stuff, my work
Right.
quicker. But you know what? I'm not rich, and that's what I got to do. But I'm the same way. I just write it out, and then I do the revisions, and the rough draft is the outline. But this isn't about me. I actually want to ask you another question before we wrap it up. If you had the opportunity to live in one comic book world, what universe would it be and why?
Oh, wow. Live in one comic book world. Wow,
For a
that's
bit,
uh
yeah.
that's a tough question because there's a few I think of offhand, but what the heck? Let me just go with the easy one. I'd probably like to live in Madman's world, Mike Allred Madman, because it looks like
Okay.
it's always like Saturday morning cartoon time, and
Uh,
just things look kind of fun and bizarro and quirky, but not menacing.
yeah.
So let's
Safe,
just
I
say
guess.
Madman's universe.
Cool, man. And you know what? Before we wrap it up, can you tell us about your Indiegogo campaign and what's that all about and where can people find it?
Yes, thank you. Look, I just happen to have this here. That's weird.
Awesome.
So I'm doing a Indiegogo campaign for El Muerto Origins, 80-page giant. So we've been talking about these books. So I'm reprinting the three original comics
Okay. That's sick.
from '98, 2004, and 2008. So people haven't seen these books for years. They've been out of
Mhm.
print. Um, so some people may recognize,
Yeah.
some of the artwork. But so I'm collecting it in this new book, Alberto Origins, which It's going to
Awesome.
debut April 30th at the Latino Comics Expo in Mola. But I have
Awesome.
the Indiegogo campaign running right now. Started last night actually. It runs for 2 weeks, so people can pre-order the book
Yeah.
and they can get a couple of new stickers with it. So they can check out the campaign. They can order the book and home shopping club time here. So they can also order Days of the Dead graphic novel and that, or they can order El Muerto Origins and El Muerto Requiem. It's my one of my only full color El Muerto
Yeah.
comics.
It's beautiful.
So anyway, yeah, hopefully you can share that link there down
We
below.
will.
But so I'm working on that and just getting ready for the expo in 2 weeks, and then finish it up teaching my spring classes.
That's awesome, man. I mean, like you, this was a great interview. Thank you for coming on, my show today to talk about your life as a comic book artist and your journey. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation, and I hope everybody who's watched this today learned something new. But until next time, Javi, I'll talk to you soon, and I'll see you at the Latino Comic Con because I am gonna go. Because
Awesome.
I need to get out of the house because I'm a homebody. So until next time, buddy, I'll see you soon. Okay.
Thanks so much, and thanks again to Nostalgic Comics for hosting us.
Yes. Thank you so much, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Christian.
All right, guys. Well, that is my show for today. Please remember if you're watching on Facebook to follow, and if you could also hit like and subscribe on YouTube and smash that notification bell to catch our latest episodes of Casually Christian presented by Livestream My Event. I'll greatly appreciate it. And also want to thank Emmanuel Alvarado and Monique again to going on location in San Gabriel and setting up the interview today. It looked great, and I really appreciate you guys' hard work. Well, until next time, guys, I'll see you guys on my update. Stay safe and read some more comic books. All right, have a good night, guys. Bye.